flying virtually in all the way from Hong Kong today, Ivan, and he will talk about how to start your startup journey as a salesperson. So you have the idea, maybe we even have the product, but how can you sell that now to your clients and customers? And Ivan, with that, I would hand over the virtual stage to you.
Thank you, Christine. I'm trying to get a way to share my screen now. Just give me a moment. All right, let's no further ado. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, my conversation will be about starting your startup journey as a salesperson and why we believe is the most crucial skill to have. First of all, I'd like to share a story about how you can get trust, a lesson learned on trust in a taxi ride that I had about 15 to 16 years ago. I started my journey or my career as a pharmaceutical production engineer in sharing plant making asthma drugs. And then after 4 years, I make a career switch to sales and I started selling SAP actually. So what Lada just mentioned all about, this were very familiar terminology for me. And I was a junior sales, and what happened was, interestingly, was I supposed to go for a meeting in Singapore, and I'm supposed to travel all the way to the west here, which is over here. And the company I work for was actually based off in the center of the business district. It takes about 30 minutes to get from this part to the other end of the Singapore. And I had a meeting. I actually make time for my meeting. You know, in Asia we cannot be late, and I make time for about 45 minutes for travel. But when I went down to the office, to the taxi line, and I saw a huge line in front of me, and I thought, damn, I will never make it in time, you know, for my meeting. And I'll probably need more than 30 minutes. So the next thing I did was I went to the front of the queue, and there was this quite elderly gentleman. I think he was in his retiree age already, but I think he was in his late 50s, I remember. And I asked him, you know, can I hop on to the next taxi with you? Are you going to the west? He said, yes, I'm going to the west. Can I hop on to the next taxi with you? So I jumped at least 8 persons queue. And then I say, I will send you to where you need to go first. And he was supposed to go to this place called Penjuru Lane, which is actually halfway through where I need to go. And I said, I'll pay for the taxi fare. I'll claim it from my company. I'll pay for a taxi fare as well. And the second thing I observed him was he was dressed plainly. He was just dressed in a white shirt and white pants. And he was just holding an envelope of a document. And then he looked me up and down. He said, oh, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm actually going for a sales call and I'm going to be late. I was afraid I'm going to be late. And I said, okay, sure. I went on a car with him. An interesting thing was, while in the car, he started asking me questions. And I say, oh, what are you doing over there? What are you selling? I'm selling SAP. And then he said, what do you think about the shipping industry? So that year was 2003, 2004, and in Singapore it was a recession time, and all over the news they were talking about how the shipping industry is a sunset industry. And I just honestly tell him, it is a sunset industry as far as I understand, and I don't think there's a future there. I tell him, and then later as the conversation goes on, he actually then, would you like to come and come to my office in Penjuru Lane? And then to cut the story short, he's actually, he said, why don't you come to my office and I'll show you my cars. I have a Rolls Royce, I have a Bentley there, you can have a look at it. And then he started telling me about his company. And much later, he gave me a name card. And after I dropped him, he actually paid for the entire taxi ride, including my taxi ride back from this part of West all the way to Singapore, or to the middle part of Singapore. And then years later, I found out that he was actually a tycoon, a shipping tycoon in Singapore. And he actually owned a few big shipping company. And the conversation I had with him was not only talking about his work, but he was telling me that he was in town, you know, for a divorce with his wife, etc., etc., etc. And the conversation got very personal. And then I learned, and then at the end, before I left the car, he actually offered me a job. He said, why don't you drop by, let them know that I give you this card, and then I'll give you a job right here in this shipping company of mine. Of course, I didn't take it up. I still believe that shipping industry was a sunset industry. Of course, it wasn't. But what I learned was, over a short period of time, from the conversation in 30 minutes, you can establish trust. And selling, we are all selling every day, including if you're even looking for a job interview, you are selling. And you can do it. And the most important thing about sales is actually, can you establish trust in a short conversation? So you meet people for the first meeting. Can you, in the first meeting, establish trust? So with that story, I'm going to go a little bit back about who I am. So I'm going to introduce a bit to you about my role. I started my job as a pharmaceutical production engineer. I did a career switch. And then I spent 15 years building startup businesses for 3 multinational corporations, starting with a Japanese, UK, and a Belgian. The last one was a Belgian company that's based off Genk. They only employed three person in Asia Pacific. I was in charge of the ASEAN and Japan and Korea. They sent each of us a credit card from Europe, and we were running around, Asia with the credit card to meet our clients and build a business from them. And it has been quite a rewarding experience with that 15 years of building businesses from scratch. Today, I'm actually an organizational psychologist. I have a company called Nanyang Angels, where we invest in startups as angel investors. I'll let you know. I'll talk a little bit about that later. We also own a division called the Corporate Disruptors Forum, where it acts as a platform for executives to come and learn through insights and experience sharing, which I'll talk a little bit more later as well. I also have mentored for 10 years with the Chinese University of Hong Kong under the invitation of the president. It's career development mentoring and also sales mentoring for startup founders. I volunteer as a head of Global Social Responsibility Initiative, the EMCC, which is the European Mentoring and Coaching Council that's based off, I think they're based off in Amsterdam as well. We have a chapter now in Asia Pacific based in Australia. I'm also an author writer with the Business Expert Press, where we write books for universities as a supplement to their curriculum. And recently, just 2 days ago, I was also appointed the mentor for startups, especially in sales and building sales capabilities with the Malaysian Digital Economic Corporation, which is actually an arm, an agency under the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia. And a little bit of who we are, actually. So this is my business partner, Sam, and we are from the Nanyang Technological University of Singapore. Between the two of us, we got really interested in startup, and we actually wrote a book titled Department of Startup, Why Every Fortune 500 Should Have One, because we believe that multinational corporations could actually and should learn about startups, innovation policies from or culture from actually startups. And today we are seeing that progression that we actually projected this to happen 5 years ago, and we are seeing it now today, where corporates are involved in corporate innovation and corporate collaboration with startups. There's a pretty hot thing nowadays to be dealing with corporate and how corporate are currently working with startups to look into innovation, disruptive innovation that is. Some of the activities I've been doing for the past 6-7 years, I'm just going to highlight a few of it here. Actually, one with the Hong Kong Science and Technology Park. Actually, we got startup founders to come and talk to our angel investors, and we got them to do it at a pub. And we got we get a beer starting first, Isaac experience, and before they start pitching. And then the pitching got very, 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 very interesting. In 2017, we did a startup founder pitching at the Volkswagen showroom in Hong Kong. So they were launching their Golf GTI, and they sponsored the entire day for us. And we got 2 female entrepreneurs to talk about their startup as a vehicle for success. And then we got our angel investors to mingle with them to ask questions. In 2018, one of the biggest one we did was with Zurich Insurance. They sponsored an entire day event. We did it in a co-working space in Hong Kong, where we call it the Founder Funders Day. So we get funders from angel investors, venture capitalists, accelerators, or that comes and tell the founders that what kind of people they actually do invest in, and what kind of startups that they would look for, what sort of founders they look for. And the last one, right before COVID, we did something called the blockchain and this cryptocurrency with the Singapore Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong. And interestingly, from the question that people ask, we actually know how old they are, because some of the old generations are asking what an e-wallet is. And then COVID happened. And then a lot of our supporters actually came and asked us, when are we coming back? And with that, we launched the Corporate Disruptors Forum. We extended that beyond the geography limitation of Hong Kong and Singapore, and we brought it across to Europe. And since 2020 and 2021, we've been continuing our engagement with Global Disruptors Online with over 30,000 individual impacts made. So initially, there's a question of what I was really proud of. So early this year, we knew that the pilots were heavily disrupted by the COVID, and we wanted to do something for them. We call it the COVID Solidarity Edition. We call it Thinking Outside the Cockpit, which is pivoting with purpose to invent a pilot's career. And we got pilots who have pivoted their career into corporate, into startups, into businesses to share how they do it in a panel discussion. No media, no press, no PowerPoint presentation, just pure conversation on a panel in our format. And we had 234 pilots from all these countries that was listed there, over 45 countries participating in that conversation. And in fact, this was the second one that we run, because the first one was so successful, they asked us to do a second one. And then recently, just last month, about corporate innovation, we run an event titled Corporate Startup Partnership Interactive Euro-Asia. We got all these magnificent speakers from all over Europe and Asia to kind of talk to our delegates. So we have people from PayPal Germany, we have Dr. Pierre Viatis from the Airbus France, we have USBC Singapore, we have Migros from Turkey, Dr. Ayesegu. And what I was really proud of is actually we had an 80% attendance and we have an 86% stay-through rate. That means they stayed from the beginning of get-go all the way to the end of the forum for the day. Now, I mentioned earlier that we are actually an angel investor, so we do invest in some startups, and some of our portfolios are listed here. And I'm actually going to share a little bit more about Purely B and the Sharon Beyond Ownership. The GENUS one is one we support education for the underprivileged. And right before COVID, we actually provided 300 children in 9 countries with English reading lessons online for free for actually all these child over there. Purely B is quite interesting for us because we were one of their very early angel investors. They raised in 2017 1.8 million ringgit. That's about, I think, 3 million Hong Kong. And then they had like 100,000 monthly active followers within 8 months to 10 months. And today, 2019, they have 100,000 Facebook followers. I'll share a little bit more about beyond ownership later. I'm just very conscious of the time that I have. So what is Nanyang Angels? What we really want to do is to be an angel investor with ethical investment. We're not out there to rob or to be a shark over the with the startup founders. We want to make social impact through our investment, and we want our startups to allow us to mentor them and allow us to open our networks for them, actually, to help them grow, especially B2B solutions. And the other part is that we want to be a leading voice of startup innovation for corporates. So again, tying on startups and how can we bring startups to actually help corporate in a disruptive world today. So the topic today is about selling. I'm going to talk about selling from 3 points of view. And the first one is yourself, right? An inward look of yourself. Why startup is important to us as startup founder or entrepreneurs. Number one, it is actually an opportunity to know yourself, to know who you are actually, to know it's a good reflection of what your calling is. Because selling is difficult and selling takes a lot of your effort. So it will tell you whether if this is what you really want to do, or is this something that you really want to participate on actually. To me, it is an honest assessment of who you are and what you want to do. If this is something that you really want to do, if this business is the one that you really want to do or not, then you need to ask yourself, can you do the most difficult thing in business? Which is also an answer to the previous question is, what's the first thing you need to do? I believe you have to be your own rainmaker. No one is going to sell for you, all right? Now, why I say it's an honest assessment? Because from selling, you can clearly see your strengths and weaknesses. So either you look at the cars in Hong Kong, right? We can put in our own design, our own name. So the first car says he's just a car, but he's flying. But the next car tell you that it's car as well, but he says it's hard to park. So when you look at your strengths and weaknesses, I think it's important to recognize what your strengths are and also what your weaknesses are, because you should have both of it actually. Because by knowing both your strengths and weaknesses, it can guide to what kind of passion you want to follow, right? So for me, for example, my weakness is I can't do all these. I probably say, for instance, I can't do. I'm actually an introvert. I don't talk too much when I meet people. But how do I do sales? We have that kind of strengths and weaknesses. Then yes, I can rely more on actually inbound sales. I rely more on bloggings. I rely more on writing to my customers. All right. So that's how you actually use your strengths and weaknesses. And the second thing is, from your strengths and weaknesses, you can actually communicate your passion through action. Now, what do we mean by that? So we have seen a lot of entrepreneurs that come to us and say, I'm passionate about this, I'm passionate about that, I'm passionate about this startup of mine. Then we will tell them, like, can you show me something you have done about your passion? A lot of time, the common excuse is, this is still an idea on a piece of paper, I need investment money to do it. No, that's not what we're asking for. If you are saying you have a startup that's passionate about child education, then I'm looking to see if you have done anything socially, or have you spent time with kids that you're targeting to actually sell to. Have you done something for them, that is actually, that shows that although you're not making money out of it, but does it show your action in fashion? So in this case, this gentleman here is 75 years old, Mr. John Brooker. And he says that I was standing at my kitchen sink one day and thought the hedge was boring, so decided to do something about it. And you know what? He put his passion into action. And that's what we're going to see in all our startup entrepreneurs. So the last bit I'll talk about is Dr. William Milton Marston. I'm not sure any one of you know of him, but a little bit background about him. He's the creator of the polygraph, the lie detector that we use today. He's the creator of the DISC theory that a lot of us are using today for personality questionnaire. But he also created this Marvel superhero. Right? Can anyone guess what Marvel superhero is that? Just give a quick type in onto the chat box if anyone know. No, nobody. How about the ladies? Does anybody know what is Dr. Marston's superhero that he created? No, not Spider-Man, Lauda. He actually created the Wonder Woman. And so Dr. William Marston, he's actually an expert in psychometric tools. He's actually an expert in, personality questionnaire, the lie detector, but he has a passion in Marvel superheroes, creating a superhero, and he created a woman. So a lot of people thought Wonder Woman was created by a woman. No, it's created by a man because he was passionate about bringing the strength of a woman to the world and see what is the Wonder Woman today, right? So William Marston has this to say: realize what you really want. It stops you from chasing butterflies and put you to work digging gold. And that's exactly what I believe sales can do for you. If you're passionate about something, try selling about it. Yes, you still have an idea and a piece purpose, try selling your services to someone on a social responsibility initiative and see what comes out of it. And last but not least, by doing sales, you not only know limits, but you know how to improve yourself. In sales, how do you improve building trust? How do you improve building trust in a short period of time? How do you improve your communication with your potential clients? So, and how do you improve as well your messages out to your potential clients? And like what Albert Einstein says, you only can accept, once you accept your limits, only then we can go beyond them. So that's part one. Next, we talk about selling to your investors. Why this is the most single important factor for angel investors. And if you angel invest, I will also suggest you look into this portion of the startup founder. Number one, selling, especially in today's COVID world and the COVID economy, the first question we ask is, can we trust you with our money? So if you are the pilot of the plane, you're not willing to do the most difficult job, which is actually getting the plane through the storm, then how can we trust our money? So I go to a lot of startup competitions and pitching, and when we come to the end of the pitching, they ask, although judges, do you have any questions for the startup founders? And I ask them that, who are you among the three of you who's going to do the sales? And then if the moment I heard is, we're going to hire someone to do it, that's when we actually will not hire, that's when we actually do not invest. And most of the time, these are the startups that will not perform, purely because none of the founders are willing to do the most difficult job. Why sales is so important? Because sales is where the rubber meets the road. It is a form of market validation for us. So for example, if you say that this product that you're creating is there are people who likes it, who loves it, and they will buy from you, and you do it as a survey. Even if you do a 500-person survey, it doesn't make any sense to us because nobody has taken money out of their pocket to buy from you. So when a customer buys from an unknown, an unproven startup, it points clearly to one thing for us. One unequivocal fact, that is the product or service that you are offering is something the customer needs, and he's buying purely on the merit of the product or the service. And that's what we want to see. We do not want to see we do not need to see a large revenue. We want to see someone buying from you, someone taking money from their own wallet to buy. I think that's the key to where sales is for us. And the other thing that I talk about just now is about the single most overused word in all pitch deck is passionate. I'm passionate about this, I'm passionate about that. But if you're not willing to do the sales, the most difficult part of it, then I think your passion is, I think your passion is I would say underwhelmed, I would say. Now, a lot of startup founders will do to us, like, I'm not a salesperson, I'm just the IT guy. Even today, we believe there's many ways for even the CTO or CITO to do the sales work. For instance, you can start posting on Reddit about the product that you're doing. You can start making, announcements out there about what is this thing is, how can this thing help, customers. You can make bloggings. All these are part of the sales activity that we're looking at. not just the guy who goes out and talk to potential clients. Not just that. We want to see this passion in action or passion with action with every of our co-founder. So I have a case study for you here, which is actually Purely Bee, which I mentioned earlier. So this lady here is the founder of Purely Bee, Jastrina. We met in the RISE event in Hong Kong in 2015. She's from Malaysia. And when they met us, the idea of Purely Bee was just on a pitch deck of 10 slides, and we talked. And then she says she's allergic about she's allergic to gluten food, and she's passionate about gluten-free food. And when she go online, she says she gets the recipes, but they're all European recipes. And she's looking to actually create some recipes for Asians with an Asian food recipe. And that's how Purely Bee is going to come about. So when we ask her more about it, I know a few things about her then. She's a seasoned digital professional from an APAC leading media entertainment group. She's highly connected in her Malaysian market. So we gave her a challenge. Can you go back to Malaysia and create a social media following before funding? And she did just that. She started an Instagram account. She turned her own personal Instagram account into Purely Bee. And within months, she managed to get 20, 30, 40,000 of followers purely on organic. And that's when we invested in her. And we have, from our investment, she went to get more investment. And today, even during COVID, she saw 229% sales increase despite COVID-19. So this is one of our success stories. Again, when we gave her the challenge, we gave her a sales challenge. Instead of going out to get revenue, go out there and get social validation, sell your social validation, get people to see what you're doing and sell it to them and let them know your story. And she did perfectly that. Now, the last part about sales is we talk about inward, we talk about investor. The third one I'd like to talk about is how sales will guide your startup and your decision-making as a startup. So I've worked in multinational corporation before with all the functions and all the bells and whistles and the support. I also started my own business. And I can tell you, in your own business, like what Vince had mentioned just now, budget is always an issue. And the most difficult person to hire is actually the sales guy. And you need to tell the sales guy, like what Lada says, your sales and mission and vision. By the time you spend money doing that to him, you have no budget left. So the most important thing is you need to do the sales yourself. And it will help your startup if you do that. The second most overused word in any of the pitching that we always see is market size. Oh, this total addressable market is 104.5 billion US dollar. And we are the market being served now is $7.8 billion. And we are only targeting 10% or even 1% of this market, which is actually $80 million. Now, I've seen enough pitch deck and everybody says, oh, it's $1 billion market. I just need 1% and that'll be $100 million. It doesn't work like that. So it's such a big market. Even when you talk about education, there's adult education, there's higher education, there's education for teenagers, there's education for preteens, there's education for children, there's education for pre-kindergarten. It's a big market. You need to know where you're going to put your resources to do which one. You need to focus. And the most easy way to help you decide is the smallest addressable market by yourself, which means that within your current founding team, without any extra budget, extra resources, what is the smallest addressable market that you can go for? And that will come in through your experience, your networks, the things you've done before, the connection you've made. And then you look at it. And most likely you say, okay, I'm looking at the kindergarten children from age 3 to 5. And then which subject? Is it mathematics, science, or English, or French? Which one you're looking at? And then drive down that to that, because that is the market you can sell from get-go. And that would be the smallest addressable market. And we want to see you building your business from the ground up, not from the top to bottom. The other thing about startup is there's this thing called, I think everybody here knows about, called pivot. And what we have done over the years is, from our experience investing in startups, because we help startups, even those who are just when the idea is on a piece of paper, and we help them to decide when they can pivot. Now, one of the terms that we came out with is called the key filling indexes. And we want our startup founders to give us 3 key filling indexes, which means that when these 3 index that they monitor all the time, and if these 3 indexes hit certain red flags, then they need to know that's the time to pivot. And when they pivot, we want them to pivot from their strength. So for instance, in the story just now about selling to kindergarten, selling French, if he needs to pivot to another market, then he should focus more on the strength, which is the children, the kindergarten, and he can probably move to science or something else, but must pivot from strength so that he or she can retain value. I wrote about this last year during the height of COVID, and this can be found at the Financial Management magazine, Lesson from the Startups Pivoting Exercise. Is read by 700 over 1,000 accountants, CPAs worldwide. And I think it's still listed there. If you go on this link, you can still find my article. Then some of the elements of key filling indexes that we help our startup founders to discover is actually this. It all ties down to cash flow and your runway, and ties to cost, competitor, clients, and technology. So about your cash flow, from your cash flow, look at key filling indexes. And one single item that can help you a lot in your cash flow is sales. It's your client. How can you get more business? How can you get more clients to help with your cash flow? And that will help you in, in building your business. Excuse me. So the last example I have is actually Eric. He came to us, I think, in 2017. He's a founders online, and then we went back to Singapore for a meeting. He actually waited for us outside the hotel conference where we went for a meeting, and then he came up to us and he drew on a piece of paper and said, "Look, I want to do circular economy." So circular economy is actually ESG, but in 2017 nobody knows about it. And then he then tells us about his experience in actually doing circular economy. Number one, he's not a graduate. He's not a diploma graduate. He doesn't even have A levels. He only have O levels. And he told me that he barely passed his O levels, which is fine to us because, number one, he has already been dealing with environmental thing. He has been to the landfill. I've never been to the landfill. He knows the industry inside out. He works for a company that cleans offices in the after work hours. So he knows the chemical that they throw, the kind of thing they need to help the environment with. He knows it in and out. So we say, okay, fine, we like you because you know what you're doing. Then we throw him a sales challenge. Can you go and create a story of impact before funding? Can you do something about it? He went back and talked to his co-founder. He gave it a thought to both of them. And he went and created this idea called Sharing Friday. And he went to one of the civil services department in Singapore. And he got them to start this campaign. On a Friday, if you need something to use, like a pen or a shoe, instead of buying a new one, go and actually borrow it or rent it from someone. And then he created a following, and that got all reported in the newspaper media in Singapore. And of course, today, Sharon is actually a very successful startup for us as well. So one of the things that he created was Sharon is actually a platform where you can actually rent, and some of your assets. So for example, you may have a camera, a GoPro camera for traveling, and you don't use it all year round. Then you can put it onto the platform so that it can be rented by someone else. So his key filling index is number of owners with popular items like GoPro, number of renters seeking premium items, number of items catered to events. You see, everything is tied to sales. And that's how he built his platform. And of course, when COVID happened, he has to change all this. And one of the things we mentor him was we wanted him to build a platform that can even can be pivoted to a B2B. So this is actually a C2C. It's not B2C, it's C2C, consumer to consumer. And we say we want him to build a platform in such a way that it can be a B2B as well. So we ask him to include capabilities like invoicing, inventory tracking, etc., etc. And then when COVID hit, he actually went and worked with a company that is able to manufacture machines that can help with sanitizing before you go into the office, that they put in the office lobby. And they are good at selling it, but they don't know how to rent it. When COVID hit, a lot of companies are not willing to buy new assets, but they're willing to spend the money to rent it. And then now Eric came in with his platform. He has all the functions of renting. He knows how to rent, and the app is able to track all these for him. So that's all I have for selling. Last but not least, some other thing I'd like to share. If you are into the higher education or you are into the alumni engagement role, our next funding event for the year for Corporate Disruptive Stories is happening on the 12th of November. We have magnificent speakers. It's all going to be conversation. We have Professor Anthony Teo, who's a Chevalier of the French Order de Palme Academic, who's going to speak. Dr. Mary Gallo, who's the top LinkedIn in alumni relationship. Professor Andres Schleisler from the Director of Education and Skills for the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. And the rest of the speakers are Dr. Douglas Proctor from Swinburne University, Kristen Freit from Coreship, Europe and EU Project, Professor Jessica from La Trobe University, and Professor Yang Wang from the HKUST Hong Kong. So if you are in any of the higher education or in the alumni engagement role, feel free to actually do a look at stop and join us on the 12th of November. These are my social media contact. I think I'm very active on LinkedIn, not really on Facebook. but you can also reach me on Instagram. And the last part is like all sales. I think I want to encourage everyone to start first. And before COVID-19, before the lockdown, I'm not an artist. I'm not even a sketch artist. But then, because I was at home, I have an iPad, and I started sketching the first one, which is the Honor Virtutis Premium, which is actually my school motto. I'm from St. George's, so that's St. George killing a dragon. And then my wife saw it and said, like, well, this looks not bad. Actually, why don't you upload it? And I think she cajoled me for almost a few weeks before I uploaded this one. And then I started sketching after that. And I decided to also try to, cajole myself to get out of my comfort zone to share it with you. So that's my wife and an iPad. That's the startup unicorn that I want for myself. And that's a trip that I went to Busan. And that was one of the picture from one of the magnet that I saw. And then I also did some of this to promote my book last year. And of course, the last one is Romeo and Juliet. And I drew this for New Year this year. I wanted an ox that has the Christian values in it with Jesus on it. So I have to draw my own. And I wish you all you as strong as an ox for this year. Well, there's a few more months left. Stay healthy and stay away from COVID. And I believe that will be the last of my presentation. So thank you and bon chance. And any questions, welcome. But the answer, love is always the answer. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christian, for the time.